the silver blade pressed against Heather's throat, cold enough to make her gasp. She knelt in the center of the grand hall, wrists bound behind her back with iron chains that burned her skin with every shallow breath. Above her, the Council of Elders sat in judgment, their faces carved from stone and ancient prejudice. "You dare defile our most sacred relic?" Elder Morvain's voice cracked like a whip across the assembled pack. "A wolfless orphan, contaminating the moon's grace with your worthless hands." Blood trickled down Heather's neck where the guard had pressed too hard. She wanted to explain, wanted to tell them she hadn't meant to touch it, that she'd only been cleaning the temple as she did every dawn for the past 3 years. But the words died in her throat as she saw the hatred in their eyes. To them, she was less than nothing. The girl without a wolf. The stray the former alpha had taken pity on before he died, allowing her to stay in exchange for the most menial labor. "The relic should have incinerated her on contact," Elder Morvain continued, rising from his seat. His robes swept the floor as he descended the dais, each step deliberate. "Yet witnesses claim it grew cool in her hands. This is witchcraft, dark magic. She has cursed our most precious artifact." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Heather caught sight of Margot, the head housekeeper, wringing her hands near the entrance. The older woman had been kind to her once, sneaking her extra bread when the pack servants were allowed to eat. Now, Margot wouldn't meet her eyes. "I didn't curse anything!" Heather's voice came out stronger than she felt. "I was only dusting the altar. The relic fell and I caught it before it hit the ground. I was trying to protect it." "Lies!" Another elder stood, his jowls shaking with rage. "The moon's grace has burned every unworthy hand that's touched it for 3 centuries. High-born wolves with impeccable bloodlines have been scarred trying to prove their devotion. You expect us to believe a nobody, a nothing, could hold it without harm?" The blade pressed deeper. Heather tasted copper on her tongue. "There's only one explanation," Elder Morvain said. "She's stolen power that doesn't belong to her, siphoned it from our sacred spaces through years of contaminating them with her presence. The punishment for desecrating the moon's grace is death by silver." No. Heather's heart hammered against her ribs. She couldn't die here. Not like this. Not for trying to save their precious relic from shattering on marble. She'd spent 22 years surviving in a world that told her she had no value. Years of scrubbing floors and eating scraps and sleeping in a storage room smaller than most wolves' closets. Years of being invisible, of making herself useful enough that they wouldn't throw her out to face the rogues that prowled beyond pack borders. She wouldn't let them take her. Life. Because their ancient artifact didn't follow their rules. The Alpha should decide her fate, not us. The voice came from the back of the hall, low and commanding. The crowd parted like water, and Heather's breath caught as Alpha Harper strode forward. He was newly ascended, having claimed the title only 6 months prior when his father fell in battle against the northern rogues. Everything about him radiated power. The way he moved, the set of his shoulders, the ice-blue eyes that seemed to see through every person in the room. He'd been away on border patrol for the past 2 weeks, dealing with increased rogue activity. Heather had hoped to never draw his attention. Alphas didn't notice servants, especially wolfless ones. But now, those ice-blue eyes fixed on her, and she felt the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. "What evidence do you have of witchcraft, Elder Morvain?" Harper's voice was mild, almost conversational, but Heather heard the steel underneath. Alpha, the girl held the moon's grace without injury, the relic that has burned every. I'm aware of the relic's history. Harper circled Heather slowly, examining her from every angle. She kept her eyes on the floor, hyper-aware of how close he was, how the scent of pine and night air seemed to follow him. I'm asking what evidence you have that she used dark magic to achieve this impossible feat. Elder Morvain sputtered. The very impossibility is evidence. She has no wolf, no power, no bloodline. There's no natural explanation for. Show me. Harper stopped in front of Elder Morvain, and though the elder was older and theoretically commanded respect, he took a step back. If the relic burns the unworthy, have someone worthy touch it now. Prove it still functions as intended. The elder's face purpled. You cannot ask one of our high-born wolves to risk injury because of this girl's crimes. Then your evidence is circumstantial at best. Harper's tone went cold. You would execute a pack member based on assumption and prejudice. She's not a pack member, another elder spat. She has no wolf. She's a charity case we've tolerated out of mercy, and this is how she repays us. Something flickered in Harper's eyes. He turned back to Heather, and she finally dared to look up. The intensity of his gaze made her want to look away again, but she held it. If she was going to die, she'd do it with her chin up. Did you intend to touch the relic? He asked her directly. No, Alpha. Her voice didn't shake. Small victories. It fell from the altar while I was cleaning. I reached out on instinct to catch it. And what happened when you held it? Heather hesitated. The truth sounded insane, but lies would only make things worse. It was hot at first, burning hot, like touching a coal from the fire. But then it changed. It got cooler, and it felt like it was humming, like it recognized me. The hall erupted in outrage. Wolves shouted over each other, demanding her immediate execution. The guard behind her grabbed her hair, yanking her head back to expose her throat more fully. Heather bit back a cry of pain. Enough! Harper's command cracked through the chaos like thunder. Every wolf fell silent. The alpha's dominance rolled through the room in waves, and Heather felt it even without a wolf of her own. A pressure in the air, heavy and absolute. Release her, now. The guard's hand left her hair immediately. The blade withdrew from her throat. Harper extended his hand to her. Stand. Heather stared at his outstretched palm, unable to process what was happening. Alphas didn't help wolfless servants to their feet. They didn't touch them at all if they could help it. That's an order, he said quietly, and there was something in his voice she couldn't identify. Not anger, not disgust, something else entirely. She placed her bound hands in his, and the moment their skin made contact, electricity shot up her arm. Harper's eyes widened fractionally, the first crack in his controlled expression. He pulled her to her feet with effortless strength, then turned to address the council without releasing her hand. I will investigate this matter personally, he announced. Until I determine what happened and why, the girl remains under my protection. Anyone who harms her will answer to me directly. Elder Morvain looked like he'd swallowed something rotten. Alpha, this is highly irregular. The girl has committed sacrilege. The girl has a name. Use it. Harper's voice dropped to a deadly quiet. And unless you'd like to challenge my authority as Alpha, I suggest you accept my judgment on this matter." No one challenged him. No one would dare. Harper was not his father. The old Alpha had been political, willing to compromise and negotiate. His son had proven himself through blood and battle. When Harper gave an order, wolves obeyed, or they left the pack. He led Heather from the hall, his hand still holding hers, the chains on her wrists clinking with every step. She could feel every eye on them, could hear the whispers starting already. The Orphan and the Alpha. What did it mean? Why would he protect her? They walked through corridors she'd scrubbed 1,000 times, past tapestries she'd dusted and windows she'd cleaned. But now she wasn't invisible. Now she was being escorted by the Alpha himself, and the few wolves they passed pressed themselves against walls and bowed their heads in submission. Harper didn't speak until they reached his private study. He closed the door behind them, then finally released her hand to move to his desk. Heather stood frozen near the entrance, unsure what to do, unable to believe she was actually in the Alpha's personal quarters. The study was exactly what she'd expected. Dark wood and leather, shelves lined with books on pack law and military strategy, maps of their territory covering one wall. But there were unexpected touches, too. A pair of worn boots by the fireplace, kicked off carelessly. A half-finished chess game on a side table. A photo on the desk of Harper and his sister, both of them younger, both of them laughing. It made him seem human. Real. Not just the terrifying Alpha who could kill with a look. "Turn around," he said. Heather obeyed and heard him move behind her. Then she felt his hands on her wrists and the chains fell away. She brought her arms forward, wincing at the burns the iron had left. They'd heal slowly without a wolf to speed the process. Just another reminder of what she lacked. "Sit." Harper gestured to one of the chairs facing his desk. When she hesitated, his expression softened fractionally. "Please, you've had a rough morning." That was the understatement of the century. Heather lowered herself into the chair, hyper-aware that she was filthy from scrubbing floors and now sitting on expensive leather. Harper settled into the chair behind his desk, studying her with an intensity that made her want to squirm. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said. "From the beginning, leave nothing out." So she did. She described her morning routine, rising before dawn, starting in the temple because it needed to be spotless before the morning prayers. She explained how she'd been dusting the altar, how her cloth had caught on the ornate stand holding the moon's grace, how the ancient relic had toppled and she'd lunged to catch it without thinking. "The moment I touched it, it burned," she said quietly, like the elder said it would. "I almost dropped it, but I knew if it shattered, they'd blame me anyway. So I held on. And then..." She struggled to find words for something that made no sense. It stopped burning. It went from fire hot to cool in seconds. And I felt something, like a vibration, but inside my chest. Like the relic was alive. Harper leaned forward, his elbows on the desk. "Has anything like this ever happened to you before? Any other objects reacting strangely in your presence?" "No, never. I'm wolfless, Alpha. I don't have power. I'm not special." The words tasted bitter, but they were true. She'd long since accepted her lot in life. And yet the moon's grace, which burns high-born wolves with impeccable bloodlines, cooled in your hands. Harper's eyes held hers. "That's not nothing, Heather." The sound of her name in his voice did something strange to her heartbeat. "I don't understand it either," she admitted. "I know what everyone thinks, that I'm worthless, that I don't belong in a pack. But I've never hurt anyone, and I would never desecrate something sacred. I was trying to protect it. I believe you. 3 words. Simple, direct, and they hit her like a physical blow. Heather stared at him, waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the cruel punchline. But Harper's expression remained serious, his eyes still locked on hers. "Why?" she whispered. "You don't know me. I'm no one." "You're not no one." Something flickered in his expression. "And I think the moon's grace might have been trying to tell us something important." Before Heather could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Harper called permission to enter, and his beta, Silas, stepped inside. The beta's gaze landed on Heather, and his eyebrows rose. "The elders are demanding an update," Silas said carefully. "They want to know what you plan to do about the situation." "Tell them I'm conducting a thorough investigation," Harper stood, moving to stare out the window overlooking the pack grounds. "And tell them that anyone who spreads rumors or attempts to harm Heather will be dealt with severely." Silas nodded slowly. "You're really protecting her." "I really am." "Harper, the elders aren't going to like this. They'll see it as you undermining their authority, and they already think you're too young, too impulsive. I don't care what they think." Harper turned from the window, and his voice held an edge Heather hadn't heard before. "The moon's grace is the most sacred object in our pack's history. If it chose not to burn her, if it responded to her in a way it hasn't responded to anyone in generations, then that means something. We're going to figure out what, and we're going to do it without executing an innocent girl because small-minded wolves are afraid of what they don't understand." The beta studied his alpha for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll handle the elders. But you need to be careful. This situation is going to attract attention you might not want. Let it." Harper moved back to his desk. "Assign guards to watch Heather's quarters. Discreet ones. I don't want anyone getting ideas about taking matters into their own hands." Heather's head spun. Guards? Protection? This morning she'd been scrubbing floors, and now the alpha was posting guards to keep her safe? Silas left, closing the door softly behind him. Harper turned his attention back to Heather, and she saw the weight of responsibility in his eyes. He was 26, she knew, but he looked older right now, tired. "You can't go back to your quarters," he said. "They're in the servants' wing, and I can't guarantee your safety there. Too many people with access, too many chances for someone to do something stupid." "Where should I go?" Heather's voice came out small. Harper was quiet for a moment. "There are guest rooms in the Alpha Wing, secure, private, and no one enters without my permission. You'll stay there until we sort this out." The Alpha Wing, where the highest-ranking pack members lived, where she had no business being. "I can't," she protested. "That's not appropriate. I'm a servant. You should be somewhere safe." Harper cut her off, but not unkindly. "And right now, the only place I can guarantee that is under my direct protection. Unless you'd rather risk having someone slip poison into your food or arrange an accident in the middle of the night." Heather's mouth snapped shut. He was right. She'd seen the hatred in the elders' eyes, heard the bloodlust in the crowd's shouts. They wanted her dead, and they'd find a way to make it happen if given the chance. "Okay," she said quietly. "Thank you, Alpha." "Harper." When she looked at him questioningly, he continued. "When we're alone, you can call me Harper. The Alpha title isn't necessary every sentence." That felt dangerous, intimate, like crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But she nodded anyway. Harper escorted her personally to the guest room, which was less a room and more a small apartment. Bedroom, sitting area, private bathroom. The bed alone was larger than the storage closet where she'd been sleeping. Fresh flowers stood in a vase by the window. Thick rugs covered gleaming hardwood floors. "I'll have someone bring you proper clothes," Harper said, gesturing to her stained work dress. "And food. You must be hungry." Heather was always hungry. The servants ate after everyone else, and there were rarely leftovers. But she nodded numbly, still trying to process everything that had happened in the past 2 hours. Harper moved toward the door, then paused. "Heather, this morning when you held the relic, did you feel anything else? Anything beyond the vibration you described?" She thought back, trying to remember details through the panic and fear. "I felt warm, but not burning warm. Safe warm. Like coming in from the cold and sitting by a fire. And I thought I heard—" She trailed off, aware of how insane it sounded. "What did you hear?" "A voice. Just one word. It said, 'Finally.'" Heather met his eyes. "Like it had been waiting for me." Harper's expression shifted into something she couldn't read. He stood very still for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Thank you for telling me. Get some rest. We'll talk more later." He left, and Heather was alone in luxury she'd never imagined. She walked to the bathroom, catching sight of herself in the mirror. Dirt smudged her face. Blood had dried on her throat where the blade had pressed. Her hair was a tangled mess. She looked exactly like what she was. A nobody, a nothing, a girl who didn't belong. But the moon's grace had chosen not to burn her, had cooled in her hands when it should have scarred her, had whispered, "Finally," like a prayer answered. Heather ran water in the enormous bathtub, watching it fill with steam. She'd figure out what it all meant eventually. For now, for the first time in years, she was safe, protected. The Alpha himself had declared it. That had to mean something. Later that evening, after she'd bathed and eaten more food than she'd seen in a week, after she'd dressed in clothes that actually fit and didn't have holes, someone knocked on her door. Heather opened it to find a young female wolf she vaguely recognized from pack gatherings. "The Alpha requests your presence in the temple," the girl said, not quite meeting Heather's eyes. "He says to bring you immediately." Unease prickled down Heather's spine. The temple, where this morning's nightmare had started. But she followed the girl through corridors that grew increasingly familiar until they stood before the temple's massive doors. Harper waited inside, along with Silas and an elderly female wolf Heather had never seen before. The old woman's eyes were milky with age, but they fixed on Heather with unnerving precision when she entered. "Come here, child," the old wolf said. Her voice sounded like wind through ancient trees. Heather glanced at Harper, who nodded encouragingly. She approached the woman, who reached out and grasped her hand. The old wolf's skin felt paper thin, her bones like bird wings, but her grip was surprisingly strong. "Elder Nova is our pack's oldest living member," Harper explained. "She served as advisor to my great-grandfather. She knows more about pack history than anyone alive." "Including the history of the moon's grace," Elder Nova added. Her milky eyes seemed to see right through Heather. "Tell me, girl, what do you know about the origins of our most sacred relic?" "Only what everyone knows," Heather said. "That it was given to the pack by the moon goddess herself centuries ago. That it marks those worthy to lead and burns those who aren't." "And what do you know about the prophecy?" Heather blinked. "What prophecy?" Elder Nova's lips curved in a smile that held no humor. "The one that was struck from the official histories 300 years ago. The one that said a girl with no wolf would come, and the moon's grace would recognize her as the true Luna, the Alpha's destined mate, the one who would save the pack from destruction." The world tilted. Heather grabbed the back of a nearby bench to steady herself. That's impossible. I'm nobody. I don't even have a wolf. The prophecy specified that detail particularly, Elder Nova continued. It said she would appear wolfless, powerless, dismissed by all, and that the moon's grace would be the first to see her truth, burning away pretense to reveal her worth. Heather looked at Harper, desperate for him to say this was insane, that the old woman was confused. But his expression was serious, considering. Like this explained something he'd been wondering about. You knew about this, she accused. When you stopped them from executing me, you already suspected. I knew the stories, Harper admitted. My father told me before he died. He said if the moon's grace ever behaved strangely, if it ever chose someone unexpected, I should remember that the goddess works in ways we don't always understand immediately. But I'm not anyone special! Heather's voice rose despite her best efforts. I can't be this girl from a prophecy. I'm an orphan who scrubs floors. I don't have power or a wolf or anything that would make me worthy to be a Luna. And yet, Elder Nova released Heather's hand and moved toward the altar where the moon's grace rested on its stand, restored to its place of honor. The relic recognizes you. Shall we test it again? No! Harper's command was sharp. We're not risking her safety to satisfy curiosity. The girl needs to know the truth, Elder Nova said, and the pack needs to see it. If she truly is the one from the prophecy, if she's your destined mate, then the moon's grace will prove it beyond doubt. Mate. The word hung in the air like a physical thing. Heather couldn't breathe around it. She looked at Harper again, and this time she saw something in his eyes she'd missed before. Recognition. Awareness. Like he'd known the moment he touched her hand in the hall, when that electricity had shot between them. Is that why you protected me? She whispered. Because of a prophecy? Because you think we're supposed to be mates? No. Harper moved closer, his voice dropping low. I protected you because what they were doing was wrong. Because you deserved a chance to defend yourself, to tell your side. The prophecy, if it's true, then it explains things. But it doesn't change the fact that you nearly died this morning for trying to save something sacred. But you felt it too, didn't you? Heather pressed. When you touched my hand, the electricity, you felt it. Harper held her gaze. Yes, I felt it. The mate bond. Wolves knew their destined partners through touch, through scent, through an instinct that went deeper than conscious thought. But that required both people to have wolves. Heather didn't have a wolf. She shouldn't be able to feel a mate bond at all, unless the prophecy was real, unless she was something more than she'd always believed. Touch it again, Elder Nova said. If you're truly the one, the moon's grace will do more than simply not burn you. It will respond. It will show us your truth. Heather's hands shook. What if I'm not? What if it burns me this time and I really was just lucky this morning? Then we'll heal you and figure out another explanation, Harper said. But he didn't sound like he believed that would happen. He sounded certain, absolutely, impossibly certain. Heather walked toward the altar on legs that felt disconnected from her body. The moon's grace sat in its place of honor. A smooth sphere of crystal shot through with veins of silver. It glowed faintly in the candlelight, pulsing like a heartbeat. She reached out slowly, giving herself time to pull back if terror overwhelmed her. Her fingertips brushed the surface of the relic, and instead of burning, instead of pain, she felt warmth flood through her entire body. The crystal grew brighter under her touch, silver veins pulsing stronger, and that voice came again. No longer a whisper, but clear as a bell. "Welcome, daughter. Welcome home." Light exploded from the moon's grace, bathing the entire temple in silver radiance. Heather gasped as power surged through her, filling spaces she hadn't known were empty, awakening something that had been sleeping her entire life. She heard a howl, distant but drawing closer, and realized with shock that it came from inside her. Her wolf. She had a wolf. Had always had one, buried so deep that nothing had been able to wake it until now. The light faded slowly, leaving Heather standing with her hand on the moon's grace, tears streaming down her face. She could feel her wolf now, a presence in her mind that felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. The wolf was young, confused, but there, undeniably there. "Impossible," Silas breathed. "She just awakened a wolf. Out of nothing." "Not nothing," Elder Nova said quietly. "The moon's grace didn't awaken her wolf. It revealed what was always hidden. The prophecy was specific. She would appear wolfless so that no one would recognize her worth, so that when the time came, the revelation would be undeniable." Harper moved to Heather's side, and she turned to him, still crying, still trying to process what had just happened. "I have a wolf," she whispered. "I can feel her. She's really there." "What's her name?" he asked gently. Heather listened to the presence in her mind, heard the answer like a song. "Luna. Her name is Luna." Elder Nova laughed, the sound cracked but genuine. "Of course it is. The goddess has a sense of humor." Heather removed her hand from the relic carefully, half expecting the wolf to disappear now that she wasn't touching the crystal. But Luna remained, curious and alert in her mind. A part of her that had always been missing, now found. "This changes everything," Silas said, looking between Heather and Harper. "If she's really your destined mate, if the prophecy is real, then the elders can't touch her. She has divine right to be Luna." "They're not going to accept this easily," Harper said. "They'll claim fraud, trickery, more dark magic. They've spent 300 years pretending the prophecy doesn't exist because it threatened their control." "Then make them accept it." Elder Nova's voice turned hard. "Your Alpha, the relic, has spoken. The girl has awakened a wolf literally named Luna. If the elders refuse to acknowledge what's right in front of them, then perhaps it's time for new elders." The old woman's words hung heavy with implication. Challenging the elders meant potential civil conflict. But letting them continue to threaten Heather's life meant going against everything the prophecy had foretold. Harper's expression hardened with decision. "We'll call a pack assembly. Tomorrow night. Everyone will see what the moon's grace revealed, and then the elders can accept their Luna or leave the pack." Fear shot through Heather. "Harper, you can't risk pack unity for me. I'm not worth—" "Don't." He turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his eyes stole her breath. "Don't ever say you're not worth it. The goddess herself marked you as my mate. The moon's grace recognized you. You have a wolf named Luna. If the pack can't see your value, then they're not the pack I want to lead." "But they'll fight this," she protested. "The elders have power, influence. They'll turn wolves against you." "Let them try." Harper reached out and took her hand, that same electricity sparking between them. But now Heather understood what it was. The mate bond, stronger than steel and twice as precious. I've spent 6 months proving myself as alpha, through strength and strategy. Now I'll prove myself through this, by standing beside my mate no matter what the cost. My mate. The words wrapped around Heather's heart like a promise. This morning she'd been nobody. Now she was everything. Destined Luna, bearer of a wolf named for her future title. The mate of an alpha who looked at her like she was worth defending against the entire world. I don't know how to be a Luna, she admitted quietly. I don't know anything about leading or politics or... You'll learn, Harper said simply. And you won't be alone. I'll be beside you every step. Elder Nova moved toward the temple entrance, leaning heavily on her cane. The goddess works in patterns, child. You were brought low so that your rise would be unmistakable. You were made to suffer so that you would understand the suffering of others. You were denied your wolf so that when she came, no one could claim you stole power that wasn't yours. Everything that happened to you, every hardship, was preparation for this moment. The old woman paused at the doorway. The prophecy doesn't end with you being recognized as Luna. It says you'll save the pack from destruction. Whatever's coming, whatever threat looms that we can't see yet, you're the key to surviving it. That's why the goddess hid you. That's why the moon's grace waited for you. So remember, your strength isn't despite what you've endured. It's because of it. She left, and Heather stood in the temple holding Harper's hand, trying to comprehend the magnitude of what had just been revealed. A prophecy, a mate bond, a wolf literally named Luna, and a destiny she had no idea how to fulfill. Are you afraid? Harper asked softly. Terrified, she admitted. This morning I was cleaning floors. Now I'm supposed to be Luna and save the pack from some unknown destruction. How am I supposed to do that? The same way you survived 22 years in a pack that treated you like nothing. Harper squeezed her hand gently. By being brave enough to keep going, even when everything seems impossible. By protecting what matters, even when it means risking yourself. You caught the moon's grace to save it from breaking. That's who you are. Someone who protects sacred things even at personal cost. That's exactly the quality a Luna needs. Heather wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe she could be what the prophecy claimed, what the goddess apparently intended. But doubt gnawed at her, whispering that this was all a mistake. That tomorrow they'd discover the relic had malfunctioned or Elder Nova had misremembered the prophecy. What if I fail? She whispered. What if I can't save anyone, and the pack falls because I wasn't strong enough? Harper turned her to face him fully, his hands on her shoulders. Then we'll fall together. But I don't believe that's going to happen. The goddess doesn't make mistakes, Heather. If she chose you, there's a reason. Trust in that, even if you can't trust in yourself yet. The conviction in his voice steadied something inside her. Harper was alpha, powerful, commanding, capable of leading hundreds of wolves, and he believed in her. That had to count for something. Tomorrow night, then, she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. We'll tell the pack. Tomorrow night, Harper agreed. And whatever happens after, whatever challenges come, You won't face them alone. That night, Heather lay in the enormous guest bed, feeling Luna's presence in her mind like a warm glow. The wolf was quiet, still adjusting to awareness, but she was there, real. Proof that Heather wasn't crazy, that the moon's grace had truly revealed something hidden. Sleep came in fits and starts, plagued by dreams of silver light and prophecies written in moonbeams. When dawn broke, Heather rose to find new clothes laid out, not servant's garb, but something nicer. A dress that actually fit properly, soft leather boots, a cloak lined with fur. Harper must have arranged it. The thought made something warm bloom in her chest. She ventured out of her room carefully, half expecting wolves to attack her in the corridors, but the few pack members she encountered only stared with wide eyes and hurried away. Word had spread, clearly. The wolfless orphan had awakened a wolf named Luna. The alpha had claimed her as his mate. The temple had exploded with silver light. Heather found Harper in his study, surrounded by papers and looking like he'd been awake all night. He glanced up when she entered, and something in his expression softened. "Did you sleep?" he asked. "A little. Did you?" "No." He rubbed his eyes tiredly. "I've been preparing for tonight, making sure we have enough witnesses from all pack sectors, planning security in case things get violent, reviewing pack law regarding challenges to the alpha's choice of mate." Heather moved closer, seeing the weight of responsibility pressing on him. "I'm sorry. This is all because of me. This is because of a prophecy that predates both of us by 3 centuries, Harper corrected. "And because the elders have held too much power for too long. If anything, you've given me the opportunity to change things that needed changing." A knock interrupted them. Silas entered, his expression grim. "We have a problem. The elders are calling for their own assembly. They're telling wolves that Heather bewitched the moon's grace, that what happened last night was a trick, and that you're being manipulated by dark magic into claiming a false mate." Harper's jaw clenched. "Of course they are. When is their assembly?" "This afternoon, before yours tonight. They're trying to turn the pack against you before you can present your case." Heather's stomach dropped. "Can they do that? Just call their own gathering?" "Technically, yes," Silas said. "The Council of Elders has authority to assemble wolves for urgent matters. They're claiming this qualifies." "Then we attend," Harper decided. "All 3 of us. We don't let them control the narrative." "Harper, that might be exactly what they want," Silas warned. "If they get you in a room surrounded by wolves they've already convinced, they could try to challenge your authority directly, maybe even try to force a leadership trial." "A leadership trial requires majority elder support and cause for removal," Harper said. "They don't have cause." "They'll say protecting a suspected dark magic user is cause," Silas countered. "They'll twist everything to make it look like you're compromised, that you can't lead objectively because of the supposed mate bond." Heather felt sick. This was spiraling out of control so fast. "Maybe I should leave," she said. "If I'm not here, they can't use me against Harper. The pack would be stable again." Both men turned to stare at her. "No," Harper said. "Absolutely not. You're not leaving, and you're not sacrificing yourself to make small-minded wolves comfortable." "But if staying causes civil conflict?" "Then we'll deal with civil conflict." Harper stood, moving around the desk to face her directly. "Heather, listen to me. The mate bond isn't just about feelings or destiny. It's about strength. 2 wolves fighting as one, leading as one. If I let them drive you away, I'm admitting they're right. That you're not worthy. That the prophecy means nothing. I won't do that. Not for politics, not for peace, not for anything." The conviction in his voice left no room for argument. Heather nodded slowly, trying to absorb his certainty when she felt none of her own. "We should head to the assembly hall," Silas said. "Better to arrive early and show strength than scramble in late." They walked together through the pack house, and Heather noticed wolves whispering, pointing, some glaring with open hostility. She kept her chin up and her eyes forward, refusing to cower. If she was going to be Luna, she needed to look like one, even if terror clawed at her insides. The assembly hall was already packed when they arrived. Wolves filled every available space, some standing along the walls when the benches ran out. The Council of Elders sat on their raised platform, Elder Morvain in the center looking pleased with himself. Harper strode to the front of the hall with Heather at his side, and the crowd parted automatically. Alpha dominance rolled off him in waves, reminding everyone present exactly who held real power here. "I wasn't aware an assembly had been called," Harper said, his voice carrying to every corner despite the lack of shouting. "I would have appreciated advance notice, Elder Morvain." "The matter was urgent," the elder replied. "When dark magic threatens the pack, we cannot afford delays." "Convenient that your urgent matter aligns with your desire to undermine my authority," Harper observed. "But proceed. I'm curious to hear what evidence you've fabricated." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elder Morvain's expression tightened, but he maintained his composure. "Last night, in the sacred temple, we witnessed what appeared to be a miraculous awakening. A wolfless girl suddenly manifested a wolf after touching the moon's grace. This seems on the surface to support the old prophecy Elder Nova spoke of." He paused, letting tension build. "However, there are other explanations, darker explanations. What if the girl is a witch who has been hiding her power all these years? What if she used our most sacred relic as a conduit to awaken a stolen wolf, one she took from another through blood magic?" Gasps echoed through the hall. Heather felt Harper tense beside her. "That's ridiculous," Harper said. "You're inventing accusations with no evidence because you can't accept what the prophecy foretold." "I have evidence," Elder Morvain countered. He gestured to someone in the crowd, and a young female wolf stepped forward hesitantly. Heather recognized her. Jessalyn, a maid who worked in the kitchens. "Tell them what you told me, child." Jessalyn wouldn't meet Heather's eyes. I've seen her talking to herself. In the storage room where she slept. I thought maybe she was lonely, but now I wonder if she was casting spells." "I was talking to myself because I was lonely," Heather said. "Being the only wolfless person in a pack of hundreds is isolating. I'm sorry if that seems suspicious, but it was just talking, not magic." "And the herbs you kept hidden under your bed?" Elder Morvain pressed. Jessalyn found strange plants, unusual combinations. What were those for? Heather's mind raced. The herbs. She'd been making tea because she couldn't sleep, using plants Margot had shown her were safe and calming. But in the context Elder Morvain was creating, they sounded damning. "Medicinal herbs for tea," she explained. "I had trouble sleeping, and Margot, the head housekeeper, taught me which plants could help. Nothing dark or magical, just chamomile and lavender and, or perhaps ingredients for spells," Elder Morvain interrupted. "Perhaps tools to cloud the Alpha's judgment, to make him believe you're his destined mate when you're really just a witch who has bewitched him." The crowd's murmurs grew louder, more agitated. Heather could feel the tide turning against her, could see belief in Elder Morvaine's words spreading through the assembled wolves. "This is absurd," Harper growled. "You're taking innocent behaviors and twisting them into evidence of dark magic. By that logic, everyone who talks to themselves or makes herbal tea is a witch." "Not everyone claims to be Luna," Elder Morvaine said. "Not everyone convinces the moon's grace to respond when it shouldn't. Not everyone awakens a wolf in their 20s when such a thing is impossible." "It's impossible for normal wolves!" Elder Nova's voice cut through the noise. The ancient woman made her way through the crowd, wolves parting respectfully despite the tension. "But the prophecy specified that she would be different, that her wolf would sleep until the moon's grace awakened it. You're trying to use the very proof of the prophecy as evidence against it." "You're a senile old woman clinging to fairy tales," Elder Morvaine snapped, losing his composure. "The prophecy was struck from the records for good reason. It was false, a product of a mad prophet seeking attention." "No," someone said from the crowd. "It was struck because it threatened you." Heads turned to find the speaker. An older male wolf stepped forward, his hair silver with age. "I'm old enough to remember when the prophecy was taught to pups, before the elders decided it was too dangerous to let people know that real power, divine power, might choose someone they didn't approve of. You buried it because you couldn't control it." Other wolves began nodding, murmuring agreement. Heather felt a tiny spark of hope. "The prophecy is clear," the old wolf continued. "A girl with no wolf, dismissed and overlooked, would be revealed by the moon's grace as the true Luna. That's exactly what we witnessed last night. You can call it witchcraft all you want, but the goddess doesn't make mistakes, and neither does our alpha." Elder Morvaine looked furious. "You're all being deceived! Can't you see this is exactly what she wants? To divide us, weaken us, so that when her true purpose reveals itself, we'll be too fractured to defend. Enough!" Harper's commands cut through the chaos like a blade. "You've made your accusations, Elder Morvaine. Now I'll make mine. You're not concerned about dark magic or pack safety. You're concerned about losing power. For decades, you and your fellow elders have ruled from behind the scenes, manipulating alphas, controlling pack policy, maintaining your authority even when you weren't the ones who earned it through strength or wisdom." He moved forward, his presence commanding every eye in the room. "I am Alpha by right of blood and trial. I earned this position through battle, sacrifice, and the support of wolves who believe in my leadership. I have chosen my mate, as is my right. The moon's grace has confirmed her as Luna, and if you cannot accept that, if you persist in spreading lies and undermining pack unity, then I will do what I should have done months ago. I'll dissolve the Council of Elders and restructure pack leadership entirely." Shocked silence blanketed the hall. "You cannot do that," Elder Morvaine said, but his voice shook slightly. "The council has existed for 300 years, exactly as long as the prophecy has been buried," Harper finished. "Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? The prophecy was silenced, and suddenly a council of elders gained unprecedented power. Almost like they were afraid of what the prophecy foretold, that traditional power structures would be challenged by a Luna they couldn't control." He turned to address the entire assembly. "I'm not asking you to accept Heather as Luna because of a prophecy, or because of what happened in the temple, or even because I've claimed her as my mate. I'm asking you to look at the evidence objectively. A girl who has lived among us for years, harming no one, serving faithfully despite receiving nothing but contempt. A girl who tried to protect our most sacred relic when it fell. A girl the moon's grace itself chose not to burn, then used to reveal a wolf that has been sleeping her entire life. His voice rang with conviction. If that's witchcraft, then the goddess herself is a witch. If that's dark magic, then the moon's grace is corrupted. But if it's what it appears to be, divine will manifesting exactly as prophesied, then we owe Heather our loyalty and respect. She is Luna, my mate, and anyone who threatens her threatens me directly. The silence stretched. Heather could barely breathe, waiting to see which way the pack would fall. Then someone began to clap. Slowly at first, then others joined in. Not the entire assembly, but enough. Enough wolves who recognized truth when they heard it, who trusted their alpha's judgment, who remembered the old prophecy and believed the goddess knew what she was doing. Elder Morvaine's face went purple with rage. You're making a mistake. This witch will destroy everything we've built. The prophecy speaks of salvation, but it doesn't specify salvation from what. Have you considered she might be the destruction we need? Saving from. I've considered it, Harper said coolly, and rejected it as paranoid rambling from wolves too set in their ways to accept change. The Council of Elders is hereby suspended, pending a full review of pack governance. Until that review is complete, all decisions will go through me and my chosen advisors directly. He'd done it. Actually done it. Dissolved the council that had held power for centuries. Heather stared at Harper, seeing the weight of that decision in his shoulders, the risk he'd taken for her. Elder Morvaine stood, shaking with fury. This is tyranny! You cannot simply remove us because we disagree with your poor judgment. I can, and I have, Harper replied. You're welcome to remain in the pack as regular members, but your authority as elders is revoked. If you choose to leave instead, the borders are open. I won't stop you. The other elders looked between each other, clearly uncertain. They'd expected Harper to back down, to compromise, to be the politically minded alpha his father had been. They hadn't anticipated someone willing to burn the entire power structure to protect his mate. One by one, the lesser elders sat back down, accepting their new reality. Only Elder Morvaine remained standing, his face twisted with hatred as he looked at Heather. This isn't over, he promised quietly. Prophecy or not, that girl is dangerous. Mark my words, she'll bring ruin to this pack, and when she does, remember that I warned you. He stalked from the hall, and this time, no one followed him. The assembly began to disperse, wolves talking in hushed, excited tones. Some approached Harper to express support. Others cast curious, no longer hostile glances at Heather. Silas moved to Harper's side. That was risky. Dissolving the council could create instability we can't afford right now. Keeping them would have created worse instability, Harper countered. They were actively working against pack unity. Better to remove them and build something new than let them poison everything from within. What's next then? Silas asked. We still need to formally present Heather as Luna. Make it official. Tonight, Harper said. At moonrise, traditional Luna ceremony. We'll do it right. Follow every custom, give no one grounds to claim illegitimacy. Heather's heart hammered. A Luna ceremony. Public claiming. Formal mate marking. It was happening so fast, too fast. But there was no slowing down now. Events had momentum of their own. Harper took her hand, squeezing gently. Are you okay? I don't know, she admitted. You just dissolved the Council of Elders for me. That's huge. What if you're wrong? What if I'm not strong enough to be Luna? Then we'll figure it out together, he said simply. But I'm not wrong. I felt the mate bond the moment I touched your hand. The moon's grace recognized you. Everything points to the same truth. You're meant to be Luna, my Luna. The possessiveness in those last two words sent warmth flooding through her. My Luna. Like she belonged to him, and he belonged to her. Two halves of a whole, exactly as the mate bond was supposed to work. That night, as the moon rose full and bright, Heather stood before the assembled pack wearing ceremonial robes that had belonged to Harper's mother. The fabric felt impossibly soft against her skin, embroidered with silver thread that caught the moonlight. Harper stood beside her in formal alpha attire, looking every inch the powerful leader he was. Silas stood as witness, along with Elder Nova and several other high-ranking pack members who supported the union. Tonight we gather under the full moon to witness the formal claiming of Luna, Silas announced, his voice carrying across the clearing. Alpha Harper has chosen his mate, and the moon's grace has confirmed her as our true Luna. Any who challenge this claiming must speak now or accept her authority forever. Silence. No one challenged. Even the wolves who had doubts seemed cowed by earlier events, unwilling to directly oppose their alpha after he'd proven his willingness to restructure the entire pack. Harper turned to Heather, taking both her hands in his. Before the goddess and the pack, I claim you as my mate, my partner, my Luna. From this moment forward, your enemies are my enemies. Your triumphs are my triumphs. We lead as one, fight as one, build our future as one. Traditional words, spoken for centuries by alphas claiming their Lunas. But when Harper said them, they felt new, personal, a promise meant for her alone. Do you accept this claiming? Silas asked Heather formally. Her voice didn't shake. I do. Harper pulled her close, and she felt the moment his canines extended. The marking bite, visible proof of their mate bond, a scar she would carry forever that announced to the world exactly who she belonged to. He lowered his head to her throat, placing the bite precisely over her pulse point. Pain flared bright and sharp, then melted into something else. Pleasure. Completion. The mate bond snapping into place like a lock finding its key. Heather gasped as she felt Harper's emotions flood through the new connection. His certainty, his protectiveness, his absolute conviction that she was his and he was hers. When he pulled back, blood marked his lips. He licked it away, eyes blazing with possession and satisfaction. Mine, he growled softly, the word meant for her alone. Yours, she agreed, feeling the truth of it down to her bones. The pack erupted in howls, acknowledging their new Luna. Even wolves who had doubted joined in, swept up in the ceremony's power and the undeniable reality of what they'd just witnessed. Heather felt Luna stirring in her mind, the wolf wanting to join the howls, and for the first time in her life, Heather let her wolf free. The sound that came from her throat was raw and unpracticed, but it was real, proof of what she'd become. The celebration lasted into the early hours of morning. Wolves who had ignored Heather for years now approached with congratulations, some genuine, some clearly forced. She accepted them all with grace she didn't feel, hyper aware of Harper's presence beside her, his hand never leaving the small of her back. When they finally retreated to the Alpha Wing, to Harper's quarters now, not the guest room, Heather collapsed onto the couch, exhausted. "Is it always like this?" she asked. "Being Luna?" "No," Harper said honestly, sitting beside her. "Tonight was unusual because everything happened so fast. Normally there's more preparation, more gradual acceptance, but we didn't have that luxury." Heather touched the mark on her throat, feeling the raised edges of the scar. His mark. Permanent proof of their bond. "I still can't quite believe this is real. 3 days ago, I was a servant. Now I'm Luna." "Now you're exactly what you were always meant to be," Harper corrected. "The servant part was just the world being too blind to see your worth." She turned to look at him, really look at him. Her mate, her alpha. The male who had risked everything to protect her when he could have let her die and avoided all this conflict. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why did you really protect me that first day? Before you knew about the prophecy or the mate bond or any of it?" Harper was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer carefully. "Because you were afraid but refused to beg. Because you tried to protect something sacred, even knowing it might cost you everything. Because when I looked at you, kneeling there with a blade at your throat, something in me said mine, before I even understood what that meant." He reached out, brushing her cheek gently. "The mate bond explains the intensity, but the core of it? I protected you because it was right, because you deserved protection, because any pack that would execute someone for trying to save a falling relic isn't a pack worth leading." Heather leaned into his touch, feeling safe for the first time in her life, truly, completely safe. "Elder Morvain said I'd bring destruction to the pack. What if he's right? What if the prophecy doesn't mean what we think it means?" "Then we'll face it together," Harper said firmly. "Whatever's coming, whatever threat the prophecy warned about, we'll handle it. You're not alone anymore, Heather. You have me, you have Silas, you have wolves who believe in you. And you have Luna, your own wolf to give you strength." Luna stirred at her name, and Heather felt a surge of warmth from the wolf. They were still learning each other, still figuring out how to be complete instead of fractured, but they would figure it out. They had time now, safety, protection. "I want to be a good Luna," Heather said quietly. "I want to prove Elder Morvain wrong. Show everyone that the goddess didn't make a mistake choosing me." "You already are proving that," Harper assured her. "You survived 22 years in a pack that gave you nothing but contempt. You maintained your dignity and kindness despite having every reason to become bitter. You protected what was sacred, even at personal cost. Those are exactly the qualities a Luna needs." He pulled her close, and she settled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "The hard part is over," he murmured into her hair. "You're Luna now, officially. No one can take that from you." But even as he said it, even as Heather tried to believe it, unease whispered at the edges of her mind. Elder Morvain's words echoed, "She'll bring ruin to this pack." The prophecy said she would save them from destruction, But no one had explained what that destruction would be, or when it would come, or why the pack needed a Luna like her specifically to survive it. Heather closed her eyes and held on to Harper, feeling the mate bond thrumming between them like a living thing. Whatever came next, whatever the prophecy truly meant, she wouldn't face it alone. She was Luna now, Harper's mate, protected by an alpha who had proven he would burn the world for her if necessary. That had to be enough. It would have to be enough. Because somewhere in the darkness beyond pack borders, forces were gathering. Threats the pack didn't see yet, danger they couldn't anticipate. And when it came, when the destruction the prophecy warned about finally revealed itself, Heather would have to prove she was more than just a wolfless orphan who got lucky. She would have to prove the goddess had chosen right. She would have to save them all. But tonight, for now, she was safe, marked, claimed. Luna. Tomorrow, she'd worry about prophecies and destruction and living up to divine expectations. Tonight, she'd just be Heather, the girl who touched the forbidden moon relic and found her destiny waiting in its silver glow. Did you like this story? What are your thoughts? And which moment grabbed you the most? Part 2 is now available. Just check the description below or click the suggested video to dive into the next chapter. Also, tell us which state you are watching from so we can give you a shout out in the next videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss any of our videos. Thanks for watching, and see you in Part 2.